many people here actually love to sell? A couple of you. You know, I was introverted. I was shy. I was in my 20s when I started sales, and I actually didn't choose to go into sales. I was a customer service manager, and I was approached by a sales manager of another company, and he asked me to come sell for him, and I said no. And so I actually turned him down about 3 times. And keep in mind, this was not a job that I actually applied for. And the 4th time he said, "Shelly, what is holding you back?" And I said, you know, I don't like salespeople. They're pushy, they're obnoxious. That's not who I am. You know, I could never do that. And I said, you know, I can't be that person. And he said, you know, Shelly, you can actually use your own personality to sell. And I thought, wow, that sounded pretty cool. And of course, then he made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. And keep in mind, I was like 25, 26, so you know that's not hard to do. So I went into sales, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to use my personality, and you can see how bubbly I am, right? And for whatever reason, that seemed to be a little problematic for me. I'm going out and I'm trying to sell to everybody under the sun, and it wasn't as easy as he made it out to be. So I definitely hung in there. I know a lot of entrepreneurs find that sales can be very, very frustrating. Is there anybody here that feels like selling is frustrating? You know, I hear from entrepreneurs all the time that you start your business, you've got this great idea, you're extremely passionate, you decide to start a business. And then you get out there and you start this business and you're trying to get this business off the ground, and it's just so frustrating. I think for a lot of people it's because you guys don't come from the sales world. You don't come from a sales background. So you don't know how to sell. Now, I'm extremely passionate about teaching some people how to sell. I feel like if I could learn how to sell, anybody can learn how to sell. But I like authentic conversations. You know, the pushy, obnoxious stuff. Of course, that was sales of many, many years ago, but we don't do that anymore. So why is it that entrepreneurs get so frustrated with sales? Any clues? Rejection can be extremely painful. Is there anybody out here that ever gets rejected? Here's no's. Does anybody here wake up in the morning and say, I just want to go out there and get 9 more no's so I can get that one yes? Well, you know, early in my sales career, I felt like I got lots and lots of no's. Very frustrating. And people would just tell me, you just have to go out there and call on more people. And so, you know, people will have you believe that you just have to go out and find more and more and more people to call on. And I'm sure many of you have heard that sales is a numbers game. Anybody hear that? And that in order to get more yeses, we have to get more what? No's. Right, everybody knows that. You know, I would go out and get my 9 no's so I could get that one yes. And then I started thinking that this is the most insane thing in the world, that I'm just going to go and continue to just churn through more and more and more people. And I finally decided, you know, Shelly, you could get better at this thing we call selling. You could learn how to do this better. You could learn new skills. And so I chose to do that, because that to me seemed like the easier route, actually. But it's, you know, if I needed 5 new clients a month, I mean, that's 50 people. And I told you I was shy, I was introverted. You know, do you think that someone like that is going to go out and call on 50 people month after month after month? No. So I started thinking that if I learned new skills, I could call on 30 people a month, and then 20 people a month, and then 10 people a month to still get my 5. And that's what I mean by learning new skills. Now, I like to teach that selling is just a conversation, because I like to kind of break it down into helping entrepreneurs know and understand that it's not a scary conversation. It's not tactics, and it really is just a conversation. But it has to be the right conversation. It really has to be a conversation that moves somebody at the end of the conversation from being that prospect that's sitting across from you to actually being a customer. So we want to make sure that we do it right. Now, there are a couple of mistakes that I feel like I see entrepreneurs do all the time, and new salespeople for that matter. And one is, and I just call it information overload. A lot of people feel like you're supposed to go out there and you're just supposed to talk about your product and service. And so you sit down with somebody new and you tell them everything there is to know about you, your company, your products, your services. It's kind of like what we called in the sales world throwing up all over your prospect. So that's sales mistake number 1. Now, sales mistake number 2 is that we go out and we have the same presentation that we give over and over and over again. Does everybody here have one rehearsed sales presentation that they feel like they give to everybody regardless of who it is? Yeah? A lot of companies actually spend a lot of money creating and crafting the perfect sales conversation that they give to their salespeople, and salespeople go out and deliver that same presentation over and over and over again. So let's talk about how to do it right. So the 3 keys to having a more effective and authentic sales conversation. One is you really have to identify your prospect. So we have to know who our prospect is, and I'm going to talk more about these. The second one is you have to uncover your prospect's needs. And the third one is you really have to have the right sales conversation with the right person. Looks like we have a lot of studious people in the room. I love it. Now, when you look at, we're going to start with the first key, which is uncovering your prospect, trying to determine who your prospect is. Now, when you look at all of the images that are up there, is there one image that actually resonates the most with you? So if you were to just pick one image, which image would you all pick? So I proved it is right. I picked some images because I wanted to see if it would really resonate with all of my personality types that I have in the room. And as I watched all of you around the room, my blueprints chose the blueprint image. My action people chose the action image. My nurturing people chose the nurturing image. And we decided we had no knowledge people in here. Nobody chose the knowledge image. You know, so when we talk about how do you identify your prospect, there's a couple of ways, and this is where this bank personality system comes into play. Because in the bank system, we have a set of value cards, and I had put these value cards on everybody's handout. So one of the easy ways that I can determine who my prospect is I can just ask them. I can just hand them my cards at the start of my meeting and say, hey, do me a quick favor and read the values on these cards and sort them in the order of what's most like you to what's least like you. It'll save us both some time, and it'll help me to serve you better. I've coded hundreds and hundreds, probably over 500 people, and everybody that I code grabs the cards, they do their thing, they hand them back, and then I explain to them what that means. It's a nice little icebreaker. But it also, because I've had training in the bank system, it also tells me how to sell to them. It tells me how to communicate with them. It tells me how to have a more effective conversation. So that's one of the ways. Certainly our training also teaches us how to code people without the use of the value cards for people who say, I am never going to do that. But when we look at the different bank codes, we talked about there being 4. You've got your blueprint, action, nurturing, and knowledge. So when you think about blueprints are very detail-oriented. Blueprints really love systems and processes and structure. So blueprints are very, very different. They're very conservative. They like to follow the rules. A lot of blueprints are pretty black and white. But for blueprints, there's not a lot of gray area. It either is this way or is this way. Blueprints really like to follow rules. And they love for other people to follow rules as well. Now, when you flip over here to the action personalities love to have fun. They love flexibility and spontaneity. They like to make sure that there's always an opportunity. They definitely like to win. They love competition. The action personalities don't like details. They don't want to deal at all in the details. So the blueprints and the action personalities are total opposites. So can you see how just those two personalities, how you really couldn't sell to them in the same way? Now when we move over here to the nurturing personality, nurturing people thrive on relationships. Relationships drive everything that they do. Now with nurturing, they love to have genuine conversations. One of the things that people get wrong when they're selling is if you're not nurturing and you sit down with a nurturing prospect, you better get to know that nurturer or they are not going to buy from you. So, you really have to spend more time with your nurturing personalities at the beginning of your meeting to really get to know them. I one time didn't do this on purpose, but I one day had, and I don't know how it worked out this way, but I literally had 4 relatively back-to-back new prospect meetings with nurturers. Now, needless to say, I was scrambling all day, and I felt like I was late to every single meeting that I went on because I had to spend the extra time to really get to know nurturers. Now, if you're nurturing and you're going out and you're having sales meetings with prospects and the person you're meeting with is not nurturing, make sure that you don't spend your whole meeting talking about you and them and their kids and the ball games this past weekend that all the kids were in. Because what happens is you run out of time and then your meeting is over and you accomplish nothing. So now we've got 3 that you can see how it's very different to sell to all 3 of these. Now when you look at the knowledge guy here on the bottom right, knowledge is really all about thinking and analyzing and data. They want to make sure that they're going to make a right decision. They definitely don't want to make a wrong decision. So with all of these personalities, you really have to sell to them very differently. You have to be able to, like I said, identify your prospects so that you really can give them what they need. Now, the second key is to uncover your prospects' needs. Now, this is another area that people that are new in sales or entrepreneurs don't do well. And it's funny, I actually get calls from corporate clients that are VPs of sales, sales managers, and they tell me that their salespeople don't do a great job of uncovering needs. So I don't want entrepreneurs to think that, you're all alone, because there are professional salespeople that don't always do a great job of uncovering needs. But you have to find out what your prospect needs, what their challenges are, what they're struggling with. It's interesting when I meet with or work with a new business owner and find out, and these are entrepreneurial business owners, and they go on meetings and I ask them what they learned from their client at the end of their meeting, and they tell me, "What do you mean? I gave a stellar presentation, but what did you learn about your prospect? I mean, what challenges are they having? What are they trying to solve?" And people tell me, I don't know. So you have to be able to do a great job of uncovering their needs to find out how you can help them. How is what you bring to the table, your solution, how is your solution going to take care of your prospect? So it's problem solving. Think doctor, think medical. You go in to see your doctor doesn't just sit down and you walk in and they don't just start telling you all about their practice and what they do and their medical schooling and prescriptions and start handing you some solution and, hey, I've got 10 different prescriptions that I can give to you. And I use this example because it's one that a lot of people really understand when it comes to uncovering needs. You go in, you sit down, it's more consultative. They ask you questions, they're pulling information out of you so that you can tell them what's going on with you. They're checking your symptoms. You're giving them all of that information, and then they provide you with a solution. So hopefully that'll kind of give you some framework when you're thinking about talking to some of your prospects. And then the third key is we want to make sure that we're having the right sales conversation with the right person. Now, we talked about having that one rehearsed sales pitch that you give over and over and over again to everybody. But if we talked about that there's 4 different personality types, and you saw how different they all are, can you see how you really have to be able to adapt your sales presentation and your sales pitch in order to reach each of those individual buyers? It makes a really big difference. And when we talk about all of these no's that everybody's getting, no after no after no, which none of us want to hear, that's why we're getting all of these no's. We're not connecting with our buyer. We're not giving the buyer what they need to make a sales decision. Now, this also goes if you think about just from a communication perspective, it's the same from a communication perspective. When you're having a conversation with someone, I mean, think about a typical, party you go to. And you go to a party and you walk up and you start talking to somebody and you go, wow, that was tedious. That was the hardest conversation. We've all had those conversations. It seemed painful. And then you walk across the room at the same party, and all of a sudden, you're having this fabulous conversation. And you're talking to somebody and you just hit it off and you feel like, oh my gosh, and you're both saying it and you're saying, oh my gosh, I found my new BFF. And we've all had those conversations, and that one, when you look at it, it's so easy, it's so comfortable, it was so genuine. Nobody had to try, nobody had to struggle. And that's because we all have the same values. So if two nurturing people are talking to one another, for example, they share similar values. And think of values like your DNA. So nurturing people, they might have totally different interests in life, in their partners and their kids, but this nurturing, it's like they're connected. They know how to communicate with one another, and it's easy. And then all of a sudden you put two personalities that are different, and it just seems so much harder. But one of the things that we teach is how to communicate with the different personality types, how to sell to different personality types. Now, there was a study that was done. In the study, there was only 18% of buyers buy from someone different from you. 82% of buyers actually prefer to work with someone who is just like them. Now that probably explains a lot about why we get so many no's.